What's going on, guys? It's your boy LQ, Mr. Real Deal Fantasy HQ, and welcome to another great episode of RotoBaller Fantasy Sports YouTube channel. Please make sure you guys like and subscribe. And today I got Week 16 bold prediction sleepers. I know it's not time to get cute and make some hot takes and stuff like that, but I'm going to give you guys some options that can possibly help you out in these starting lineups. Some guys that you could just plug and play in, or if you're dealing with injuries that are carrying on from last week into this week, I got some options for you for some people that you can put into your starting lineups, and maybe a defense will make the list. So I don't want to waste any more time. So let's get right into the episode. First up, I got Chuba Hubbard, man. He's been running hard in the last three games. Really impressive, man. 278 rushing yards in the last three games, which is third among running backs. And he's looking at 74 touches since then as well, which is second among the running backs with 8 rushes of 10 plus yards. Now, why he's a sleeper is that this Packers defense, man, they've been allowing the most rushing yards since week 11 and 5.3 yards per carry with 4 rushing touchdowns and 19 rushes of 10 plus yards. But Chuba Hubbard basically running hard, taking over that RB1 role there over there in Carolina. I really like him this week as an option as a flex or RB2 if you're down bag. So go ahead and plug in Chuba. Next up, I got the cardio king, Gabe Davis. Now, listen, if he doesn't show up in this matchup against the Chargers, I don't know what to tell you, but I think he's a potential sleeper just based on the last 3 of his 4 games. He's put it up donuts. And we all know as a manager who has Gabe Davis that he is bust or boom, hot or cold, and he does this all season long. But he has potential to be relied on if you are still in the fantasy playoffs, because he's probably knocked a few people out of the fantasy playoff run or in the matchup as well. But I think he can get it together this week. Where the bold prediction is that I can see him putting up a top 10 performance this week, and he's going to help out a lot of few managers to punch that ticket to the championship. So you can rely on Gabe Davis this week going against the Chargers defense, who look like they gave up hope. They just given up completely on the season. They're just chalking this up and looking towards 2024. So Gabe Davis, please don't make me look silly. Forget about it. Tommy DeVito has a chance to be a true fantasy hero this week. A lot of fantasy managers are riding with him into the second round of the playoffs and possibly get us to the championship, going against this Eagles defense, who are allowing the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. And listen, he plays smart football with some rushing upside as well. He hasn't thrown an interception since week 10, so that's good to know. He has 1 fumble loss, but that's fine. I'm looking for him to have the rushing upside, and the bold prediction here is that he's going to have over 20 fantasy points and put on for Jersey, get the win in Philly as well. And I want you guys to understand it doesn't matter the outcome, but I really feel as though Tommy DeVito, he's going to lock up a lot of fantasy managers' ticket to the big dance next round. Now, this might sound crazy, but a potential sleeper defense has made the list, and it's the Washington Commanders versus the Jets. Now, hear me out. I know this Commanders defense is god-awful, man. They've been getting up a ton of yards, a ton of points, et cetera, but they're going against the Jets, who are still trying to find their rhythm at the quarterback position to get this offense moving. And I really think the upside here is that they're going to be able to get to the quarterback or whoever they put back there, if it's Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, whoever the case may be, Uncle Rico, it doesn't matter. I feel as though the Washington Commanders can get to the quarterback, get some sacks with some potential of taking the turnovers as well. Because you got to look at this pass rush that the Commanders won last week against my Rams. They were able to sack Matthew Stafford 3 times. That's the most he's been sacked since week 6 this season, people, with 10 QB pressures. And we know this Jets O-line is god-awful. So the Commanders, they could probably contain some points and get the sacks with a couple interceptions here, there, maybe some forced fumbles. I like the Commanders as a potential sleeper this week to put up some big points and probably be a top 10 defense this week for the fantasy playoffs. Last but certainly not least, let's stay in Washington with the Commanders running back situation. Now, Christian Rodriguez could see a larger role this week. He saw some time last week with Brian Robinson still dealing with a hamstring injury, so he might be up to handle some things on the ground. Antonio Gibson also going to be involved. He had 5 targets, 5 receptions last week. Not a ton of fantasy points out of the two, but they're going against this Jets defense where they're probably going to lock up and keep the wide receivers to a minimum. So you would think that Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett, who was ever at quarterback at some time of the game, game would do a lot of dump offs to get them more involved. Now, Rodriguez showed some juice last week against this Rams defense, who were tough on the ground. Bust off a nice 11-yard run. So I think with more time and more involvement in the offense, he can possibly put up 10 fantasy points or more. Same thing with Antonio Gibson being involved in the passing game as well, because the Jets are allowed, they're actually top 10 in most receptions allowed to running backs and rushing yards allowed to running backs this season. So I think this is where the game plan needs to lie with Sam Howell or whoever's at quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, to get some dump offs and just hand the ball off to Christian Rodriguez to see if he can get something going on the ground as well. So that's the bold predictions this week, people. Hopefully you guys like this episode. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the RotoBaller Fantasy Sports YouTube channel. And you can leave your start and sit questions here, and I'll try to answer them all the way up until game time. And of course, you guys can follow me at Real Deal Fantasy on all social media platforms. Until next time.